Hi, I am Nick D. Clements, and I used to make stuff like this. Hey, you want to see a magic trick? What if I told you I could erase this permanent marker? That'd be pretty cool. You know, we're not going to use solvents like alcohol or acetone, which in most cases is your best bet for removing permanent marker. In this case, we're just going to use an eraser. You ready? How cool is that? What, maybe it's dry erase marker? No? Well, maybe it's not real permanent marker? Well, here's a Sharpie. It's not the marker, it's not the eraser, it's the paper. So in this episode of Nick D. Clements Tells You About Specialty Papers that you may or may not have heard of, we're talking about parchment paper. Now if you're like me, for most of my life, when I heard the term parchment paper, I thought of something like this. Old paper, something that Harry Potter and his friends would write on. But parchment paper is a bit different. But if you are familiar with parchment paper, you probably know it as a kitchen product. And it primarily is. You'll find it in the kitchen section along with all the other aluminum foils and wax papers. And it's a great thing to have in the kitchen. It can stand up to high temperatures, almost nothing ever sticks to it. And we'll talk about some of the more creative ways you can use it in the kitchen in a little bit. But I want to talk about some of the ways you can use it outside of the kitchen. First off, it's just a great surface to work on. Pretty much any kind of work that I'm doing, especially when the material I'm using I don't want getting on my table, whether it be resins or glues or inks or even working with clay, I like to set up a workstation with a sheet of parchment paper. And now instead of just pulling out a sheet and setting it on the table, I like to put it on something else. For instance, a hard placemat. I like to just take a sheet, put it over, and I just have a few little binder clips. And now we just have a really nice, smooth, flat surface. Nothing's going to peel up on us. And we know that whatever we put on here, we're going to be able to get off. Super glue, for instance. Parchment paper is a great surface to use super glue on. Say I just want to glue these two boards together and have them nice and flush. And just put some super glue on the edge, lay it right down on the paper. Hit this side with activator for speed. And just push them both down on my surface and push them together. And I don't have to worry about the squeeze out on the other side sticking to the parchment paper, because it's not gonna. It's gonna peel right up and right off, even if I wanted to glue this to the parchment paper. Not gonna happen. Same thing for hot glue. Parchment paper is a great surface that hot glue will not stick to. Peels right off. Another way I like to make a work surface with parchment paper is with a steel tray. Just lay out some parchment on the tray and secure it down with some magnets. And again, we've got a really nice flat work surface. Nothing's gonna peel up on us, and this can even go right in the oven if you wanted to, say, cook some clay or something. Now, one thing to keep in mind, you can just put this in the oven as is. You don't have to take the magnets off. They will go in the oven just fine. They're not going to explode or anything, but they most likely will lose their magnetism. Heat demagnetizes magnets as well as blunt force trauma. However, you could use these. Now these might just look like normal rare earth neodymium. Now these might just look like regular rare earth neodymium magnets, but these are actually high temp magnets. So these can go in the oven and they won't lose their magnetism. And they're a fair bit stronger. I have a really cute septic eye Sam here that Lisa sculpted for an upcoming project I'm working on, and it hasn't been baked yet, so why don't we put it on our parchment paper here and throw it in the oven. While it's cooking, we'll talk about some more unconventional ways to use parchment paper in the kitchen. One place I bet you never thought to use parchment paper is in the deep fryer. Now, we like to make our own egg rolls, and one thing that tends to happen is that they will stick to the bottom of the basket. So one day I thought to try and use some parchment paper. So I attempted to line the basket with some parchment paper, and it half worked. I mean, it held up to the oil just fine. That certainly wasn't a problem. And it actually did prevent the egg rolls from sticking to the bottom of the basket. But the biggest issue was it floats. And the paper just kept coming to the surface of the oil. And I even tried putting some wire in there and it just got messy real quick. But then it dawned on me. Instead of trying to put parchment paper in the basket, just put it around the actual egg roll. Now, unfortunately, I don't have any of those egg rolls right now. I wish I did. They're my wife's recipe and they're really good, but we'll use this hard to hold on to toy as a stand-in for one. Now, we actually already wrap them in strips of parchment paper when we make them and freeze them. So they pretty much already come out of the freezer already wrapped in parchment paper. So there's nothing more you gotta do. Just drop them pre-wrapped in the parchment paper, let them cook for a few seconds, slip the parchment paper out, and then they won't stick to the basket anymore. It works amazing. So yeah, next time you're messing around with your deep fryer, see if parchment paper can help you out. All right, hot out of the oven. Our little septic eye, nice and hard. Our magnets, still very much magnetized. Another awesome use for parchment paper is it actually makes really great tracing paper. Pull out a new sheet here, got our good old Mona Lisa. Super easy to see through. Check that out. 45 square feet of tracing paper for around $3. That's a pretty good deal. And as we saw earlier, you can erase your permanent marker. I just think that's so cool. You also don't have to trace with marker. You can trace with something much more tasty, like chocolate. All right, this has cooled down a bit. Let's see if we can actually get it off in one piece. Haha, look at that. Chocolate Mona Lisa outline. So you definitely see the potential. Oh no! That's pretty good art. Another cool way to use the chocolate drawing technique is to take a butterfly image, or we'll just draw one real quick. The butterfly, I swear. And take a big book. And take your parchment paper, crease that as well. and then trace out your butterfly. And then when that hardens, you actually have a 3D butterfly, which is really cool. Alright, let's quickly talk about wax paper. Now, a lot of the things parchment paper can do, so can wax paper. Even the erasable Sharpie. Somewhat. And the Sharpie's a bit darker on the wax paper compared to the parchment paper. But it erases much cleaner on the parchment paper. But parchment paper is much thicker, it can stand up to heat, and you'll find a lot more things released from parchment paper than they will from just wax paper. So they both have their uses, and I kind of see it like this. You have good latex gloves, and you have simple food handler's gloves. These food handler's gloves, you can get a whole ton for a few bucks, just like you can get twice as much wax paper as you can for parchment paper. These are great if you just need to pick something up real quick and you don't want to get your hands dirty, if you don't need a lot of dexterity. However, if you need a lot of quality, you need dexterity, you throw on a good pair of rubber gloves. So yeah, if you're just doing something simple or pressing some leaves or flowers in a book, then yeah, wax paper is your go-to stuff. But if you want something with more substance, a bit sturdier, something you know stuff isn't going to stick to, then grab some parchment paper. However, there are some limitations to parchment paper, so let's go over those now. First, almost nothing sticks to parchment paper, which is great, unless you want something to stick to it. So, taping parchment paper isn't going to work very well. At all. So that's why when I put it on the board I used binder clips. You're not going to find any kind of tape that's really going to hold parchment paper well. So using it to make a form, something you could fill with resin or silicone, while it would work great because it wouldn't stick, it won't stick to itself, so you can't really do that. So that's kind of a drawback, where one of its greatest strengths is also a weakness, and you do find some situations where it'd be great if you could get tape to stick to it, but you're probably not. Another issue you might run into is that it doesn't hold up to water very well. It'll be hydrophobic at first, but the water will quickly seep into it and begin to wrinkle it. This could be an issue with things like water-based glues, like wood glue. Wood glue on this will eventually wrinkle up the whole page, so if you had something on here and you wanted everything to be smooth, you're not going to quite get the surface you were expecting. And the last problem with parchment paper worth mentioning is that it's a little loud. So if you have some issues with noise, you might just want to stick with wax paper. Okay, sorry. Now, finally, just in case it's not obvious, parchment paper is also just really great for cooking in the oven with. You just put a sheet of parchment paper on a baking tray, toss on whatever food you need to cook, throw it in the oven, that's it. When you take it out, you probably don't even have to wash the sheet. Call. Alright, well, I hope this either introduced you to parchment paper or at the very least showed you some new ways you can use it. I know I'm always keeping the craft room, the workshop, and the kitchen stocked with this stuff. And then I'm always buying more because if there's a question, the answer just might be parchment paper. Anyway, my sincere thank you for watching. Once again, I am Nick D. Clements. If you're wondering, Nick is short for Nicholas and the D stands for Derek. Anyway, I'm off to make something else. And the D stands for Derek. Anyway, I'm a bug in my face. Ugh. Oh, I got him.